Hi, everyone. It's Plastic EP from Melbourne, Australia. That's right. We're freezing down here, but we've just gone straight across to the USA. And Terry Crain and I have got one of the greatest people and performers and artists you'll ever meet in your life. Carol Connors, how are you today?
I'm good day. Isn't that what I'm supposed to say? Good day.
Yeah, that's right. Say good day. And what happens is if you ever come to Australia, we'll make a barbie for you, barbecue. We'll have something on the.
And you want to hear the funny thing, Plastic EP? My best friend is Barbie Benton.
I love Barbie. I'm not going to say any more, but hopefully one day we get to interview Barbie because I'm a big fan like Terry. We love her.
Well, as long as the model will put it together, I'll talk to Barbie because you will love her. She's great. And we've been diving all over the world together. We're dive buddies, little mermaids.
Unbelievable. And if you come to Melbourne, Australia, we'll go out for lunch. I want to tell everybody your claim to fame, right? Now, I believe that you recorded the song To Know Him Is to Love Him in July 1958. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you know why? Plastic EP was born on the 9th of July, 1958. So I'm born, and you've just recorded the biggest song in the world. And Phil Spector came up to you and said, I got this song. Tell everybody the fantastic story.
I was in junior high school, and Phil was dating my girlfriend, Donna. So they would be like smooching and kissing. And I was her best friend at the time. Barbie was not even born yet. And the bottom line is, I would be twiddling my thumbs and singing just the hit parade. And one day he said to me, I love your voice. I'm going to write a song for your voice. Do you have $10? Because if you have $10, not only will I write the song, but you can be in our group. So I said, Phil, I'm 16 and a half years of age. Not only don't I have $10, I don't have 10 cents. We were really quite poor. So the bottom line is I went to my mom and dad. My dad had been a jockey, and jockeys live on the edge. My dad wasn't a gambling man, but he lived on the edge. And I said, Mom and Dad, I need $10. If you give me $10, I'm going to cut a record, and it's going to be a big hit. We're going to live in a mansion. We're going to drive a great car. And Daddy, I will get you a racehorse. And my father said, pass on the racehorse. I'm off the track. No racehorse. But my mom didn't want me to give me the $10. She wanted me to do my homework. So she kept saying, Annette, my real name, Annette, go do your homework. And my father finally said, Gail, give her the $10. Just give her the $10. So we went into the recording studio and we cut the flip side of To Know Him Is to Love Him. Don't you worry, my little pet. And my voice stood out because it was, I'll think of you. Yes, I will. So Phil came up to me afterwards and he says, I love your voice even more. I'm really going to write that song. About 2 weeks go by, the phone rings. Guess what I was doing, Plastic EP and Terry? My homework. Got it. And the phone rings and Phil Spector goes like this. Et cetera, et cetera. And he plays the song for me. And I went, he says, what do you think? And I went, oh, it's okay. And he says, we'll be here tomorrow. We have to rehearse. And we would like a garage band. He said, and then we're going into the recording studio. I said, okay, how am I going to get there? Because I was too young to drive. He said, take the bus. So I did. And went to the garage and we rehearsed. So went into the studio and none of us knew. I mean, I did it in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, 2 takes, one for balance and one me singing. Never spliced a word. It was a 2-track machine. Stan Ross was the engineer. It was at Gold Star. We literally put Gold Star on the map. Record went out. It was not the A side. Don't You Worry, My Little Pet was. And a disc jockey in Minneapolis flipped the record by mistake around midnight. His name was Lou Riegert at KDWB. I'll never forget it. And the whole place lit up. I mean, it just lit up. And all of a sudden, Dory Records got an order for 100 records. Then another 100. 300, 1,000, 10,000. And they went, oi, we're going to have a number one record here. And we went, what? None of us knowing that it would be a hit. And that's literally how it started.
So I'm curious, was the $10 your share, or did the $10 cover the whole thing and you had to pay it?
My mother says that we sort of backed it, even though we didn't have the money. But we all did put in $10.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
We really did. And that's how we recorded it. And it was Dory Record, which actually was a subsidiary of a major label called Era Records, which was also a little label. And it went to number one and stayed at number one in 58, longer than any other song. I think it was, you'll probably know Plastic EP, but I think it was more like 6 weeks or something. And we climbed the charts and we did the Dick Clark show twice. I gave him a teddy bear. Not me. I gave him a little teddy bear.
This is so fascinating, like the Elvis Presley story. It's right up there and bigger than that too. This is like, here we go, $10. I'm a school student. I'm just studying. There you go. One event changed my whole life, 20 minutes. I mean, this is like, you can't write a film better than this. This is unbelievable, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, what amazed me is that, you know, and this is sort of, I think, interesting because Phil, it was the first thing he ever wrote, first thing he ever produced. And he said to me before I started singing, he said, because I had never sang before. I'd been in school, but had never really sang. But my mother was supposed to study opera in Warsaw, but the war broke out. So he said to me, he said, when you sing it, think like you're singing to a boyfriend. And I went, Phil, I don't have a boyfriend. I'm 16 and a half. You're the one who's going with Donna. And he said, then think of your father. And I did. And you know that Phil's father committed suicide in New York, in the Bronx. And his mother, Mother Bertha, moved the family out here to California after. And on the father's epitaph, it said, to know him was to love him. And he turned it into a teenage lament and literally cast my voice.
Can I ask you now about Elvis, since we're moving on to the King? Tell me about that.
Well, you know, the Baz Luhrmann film is being released mañana in the United States. It's called Elvis. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but it is so brilliant. If Tom Hanks does not get nominated as Colonel Parker, I will slap the Academy. Get it? Slap Will Smith.
Yeah.
So I couldn't resist that.
I love it. Go on.
In fact, I was on with the Oscars yesterday talking about some things, but whatever. So what happened was I was older and this sort of creepy guy came up to me in a market and he said, aren't you the girl that sang To Know Him Is to Love Him? And I went, yes. He said, well, Elvis would really like to meet you. He loves your voice. And I went, yeah, right, sure. You know, like I really believed him. But because maybe I have my father's spirit, we're both Scorpios, My father was a Scorpio. I had an adventurous side to me. So he said, may I take your phone number? And I gave him my number. About a week later, the phone rings and it's this creepy guy. And he says, I'd like to take you up to Elvis. He really wants to meet you. And I went, oh, yeah, right. So we went up to Elvis's house. And I remember walking down, it was on Bellagio. And I remember walking down these steps. And there was like a pool table. And I was at one end and he was at the other. And he was like a giant cat. His movements were so fluid. He just moved like that. And he said to me, first words out of his mouth were, so why'd you name Rube Teddy Bears? And I looked at him and I said, I didn't know what to say. I said, that's Elvis in front of me. And I went, just want to be your teddy bear. And that started our love affair. And at that time, Priscilla and I looked very much alike. He had met Priscilla, but he hadn't, they hadn't gotten married or anything. And I went with him for 9 months. I was too stupid. I didn't have a baby. I didn't have a baby. How stupid is that? But, he was my first. He was my very first, ladies, my first, you figure it out, my very first boyfriend. He really was.
Carol, can I ask you where he used to take you? Did he used to take you to movie theaters where there was no people? And what car was he driving at that time? And what was the adulation coming towards Elvis with you being his girlfriend? Like, this is an unbelievable story in itself.
Well, first of all, Elvis never went out. He did not like to go out. And so everything was self-contained, almost like with Barbie with Hefner. Everything was self-contained. And the Memphis Mafia, that's what the boys were all called, his cousins, Lamar, and Joe Esposito was the top guy underneath Colonel Parker. He would always have somebody pick me up and then he wanted me to stay the night. And I couldn't, because I was, in those days, I lived in my mother's house and you had to be at home before the sun came up if you were a good girl. And I was, to a certain extent. And so we never went anywhere, but we were always at the house. And he was wonderful. I mean, I remember once he told a joke, and it was just the worst joke I had ever heard. And I didn't laugh. And he said, why aren't you laughing? I said, Elvis, that joke is dreadful. And I don't know if I used the word dreadful. And he said, I know that, and you know that, but they will laugh. They will do anything they're supposed to do.
Carol, can you tell us that joke?
I don't remember it. It's a long time ago. But I can, there's a documentary coming out about my life. And the night that Elvis died, because we had stayed friends. And whenever I went to Vegas, he would, with my girlfriends, we would have Joe Esposito would give us the best seats and we'd go downstairs into the dressing room. And one time he was sitting with Shelley Fabre. Yep. Johnny Angel, how I love you. And he said, oh my God, here comes beautiful Carol. We went together on and off for 2.5 years. She's blind as a bat. I was very nearsighted. And I looked at Elvis and I said, Elvis, it was more off than on. And he did laugh. He thought that was funny. But I could play a little of the song that the night that he died, he was supposed to do A Star Is Born, which meant he would have been up against us in Rocky. That was the year that those were the two that battled each other. Okay. And we were winning everything. But Colonel Parker, apparently, this is what I was told from Elvis, said, my boy ain't going to play no second fiddle to a Barbra Streisand and end up a drunk. So he never did the film. But I think if he would have lived longer. I think that was one of his needs, was to be respected on that level. But the night that he died, the day he died, I was at the Polo Lounge. The Oscars had come and gone, and he had congratulated me. And I was sitting there in a meeting. This little guy walked in, my height, Philip Morris guy, and he would be the one that would always bring the phone to somebody. And he said, he screamed, Elvis Presley just died. Elvis Presley just died. And there was like a terrible sigh throughout the whole room of sadness. And I couldn't go, I started crying and I couldn't go on with the meeting. I went home and I sat down, not this house. This is a house that Rocky built. But at that time I lived somewhere else. And that's Stallone, I can imitate him too. And I sat down at my piano, and from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 4 a.m. in the morning, I wrote this song called You Loved My Night Away. It was a tribute to my love affair, our love affair. And I have never changed a note, and I've never changed a word. And I wrote it in 1977. Do you want to hear a little?
Yes,
please.
Please.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
But I can only play a little. Okay.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Through whispered words once spoken, lost in dreams of yesterday, you came to me, you loved my night away. And then it goes on and on and on. I can't play any more than that. I'll get in trouble.
Gotcha. Hey, I want to ask you something though. Like right there, your performance, amazing. So when you watch the Perry Como clip, you see Phil Spector and I think it's Marshall on the side of you. Yes, Marshall Lee. And I'll tell you what, they look nervous. You're out on this, looks like a barren stage on the Perry Como show, but there's Carol right in the middle, just looking like she owns the camera and singing. It looks great. It does. And I was going to ask you about that. Does that just come natural to you or what?
Well, I love to sing, and that's from my mother. My father was tone deaf. And when I sing, I go into like another zone. And, that was live, and we were the #1 record in the world at that time. And during rehearsal, I went to go for that high note because why can't he see? It's a really high note. It's from a Wagnerian opera, according to Phil. And he loved Wagner. I don't. But he said I didn't hit the note correctly in the rehearsal. And he put me up against the wall and he said, Annette, if you ruin my song, I'm going to fucking kill you, So when I went to go for that high note, my mother, if you look at it real closely, you can see that there's like a big gulp where I'm going, God, please let me hit the note correctly. I did. Hallelujah. Thank you, God.
Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about Rocky, and if you could just play a little bit of Rocky.
If I haven't played Rocky, but it's that's the beginning of Rocky.
How'd Rocky come about?
They were looking to have a song written. So we were at what's known as a rough cut, which means that if I were to hit you plasticky pee, you wouldn't hear it. There's no sound effects. And there was a song in the film already called a temp track. And it went, he's got a Sunday punch that will put you into Monday. So I said to Bill Conti, who was sitting next to me, why do they want us? That's pretty good. And he said to me, shut up, Carol. Okay. So there was Stallone and Sasha and Erwin Winkler, and I think Burt Young was there, and Robert Chardoff, and the director, John Avildsen, and his friend. And the film, the scene, the iconic scene, which is the entire, it's the pivotal scene of the film. Yeah. When he, beats the meat and he drinks the yolks and he runs and he climbs up the steps. And John Avildsen, the director, put him in slow motion, if you remember, if you know the scene in his hands are up. lights go on at the end of the film, and this little man stands up and he says very softly, John, you have a remarkable film here. John, because he was a director, you have a great film here. His voice went up a little. John, this film is going to get nominated. John, you're probably going to win the Oscar, and this will win the Oscar, this film. By now, he's like hysterical. And we're going, what? He said, if you do one little thing, and all of us are going, what? And he said, quote, oh my God, my language. He said, get rid of that fucking song, which was Septak. But that song was written by Frank Stallone.
Oh, okay.
But, John Avildsen was a director and he had control over the film. So they all leave and Bill did that, what I just did. Ba, 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 ba.
Yeah.
And I went into the shower. In those days, you could take your phone in, if you're not now, because there's cell phones. And all of a sudden, I can see the film running through my mind. I can see him doing everything with the yolk and the pounding the meat and the running and the sun coming up and climbing the steps. And I called Bill from the shower and I said, Bill, I know what life's about. I know what the film's about. I know what the song's about. And he said, where are you? And I went, I'm in the shower, because I'd taken the phone in the shower. He said, are you alone? I said, Bill, I'm a Scorpio. Would I be calling you if I was with somebody? I'm by myself. He said, do me a favor, Carol. Give me the line before you electrocute yourself. And the line was, gonna fly now. Because at that moment, when he put him in slow motion and his hands went up, he could do anything. He could do anything any of us are set our minds to do. He could go the distance. He could win. He could even fly. Hence, gonna fly now.
Carol, what was it like when Terry Crain rang you and told you that you wrote a Beatles song and there's a copyright about that song? Terry, tell Carol the name of the song because the viewers don't know what happened. Just go through it.
I believe it was I Want to Marry a Beatle, which I believe Carol was in the movie that was there. And I just happened to ask her one day, I said, tell me about writing a song. And maybe I'll let her tell the rest of the story.
No, you can tell it. I've talked a lot.
EP, what I believe is Carol let me call her. We were doing some emails and she let me call her because I think she wanted to let me down easily and to tell me personally that my research was wrong and it wasn't, she didn't write a Beatles song. I felt bad. I thought, man, I can't believe I did all that research and I had it wrong and all that. But the longer we talked, I think she started realizing maybe I did.
I mean, I forgot I wrote it and you reminded me. And sure enough, when I looked up the copyright, I did write it. But it was like, but I love the Beatles. I mean, in my mind, the three people that changed the face, the hearing of music as we know it, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, the Beatles. So they're my idols. And once I bumped into Sir Paul McCartney. He has a home near where I live. And so did Priscilla Presley. She just sold her house. I said to him, something we got into that I had written, Born Again, come bring me your softness, about my love affair with Robert Culp. And he said, I love that song. And I said, well, I love every single song you have ever done. But I wish I would have remembered that I wrote that song because I would have told them. But they did record To Know Him Is to Love Him.
They did.
I think they were called the Silver Beatles at the time or something.
We're going to play a bit of that Beatles song right now. our privilege, Plastic EP and Terry Crain, to interview you today. And let me tell you, every day that you wake up, the world loves you. They love your songs. They love everything you've done right in your career. And we salute you.
Thank you. Can I do my dolphin call? Do you think they love me too?
Yes, please. Go for it now.
We've got to do that.
Okay, because I can sound like a dolphin. I wore my dolphin jewelry.
Good
day.
She's
amazing.
right,
Thank you, Carol. We love you.
I love you too. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Thank you both, Plastic EP and also Terry. And I did write that song.